I had admitted that I do not have the playbook to lead this congregation. So I shared with people once again, after receiving the call, being humbled, began to pray and ask the Lord exactly how is it that He would have me to lead this congregation, because it is a church that is still hurting, a church that's still trying to heal.
It was the 17th of June in 2015 at around 8 in the evening when a 22-year-old young man entered the Episcopal Methodist African Church, Mother Emanuel, in Charleston, South Carolina, during a class in Bible studies. He would emerge just 1 hour later with a pistol in his hand, leaving behind 9 dead. The killer, Dylann Roof, is a white supremacist. Later on, he would tell investigators that he had massacred the Bible class in order to start a race war. The Reverend Eric Manning has served just a few months as head of this church, a church founded by slaves, a church that is one of the oldest in the South, a symbol for the Afro-American community.
Mother Emanuel is, in fact, more than a church. This is a place of worship that was founded by African Americans seeking liberty. This is a church that was burned to the ground because its worshipers worked to end slavery.
Dylann Roof has been sentenced to death, but racism in America is doing all too well. They know something about racism at the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, one of the most important organizations for the defense of civil rights in the United States. Its Charleston branch is just a few hundred feet away from the site of the massacre.
Racism is baked into the American condition. You've got a nation that was founded on a strange form of agrarian capitalism that depended on people owning people all across the nation at one point, I think, to what the country has been. And that's why it's going to be so hard to root out. You've got a ruling class that owned people, that had to justify that and also call themselves people of faith. So therefore they had to say these people are not people like us. They're an inferior species. So owning them is really doing them a favor. We're taking them out of the jungles and giving them a different life. You also had a much larger white class that was dirt poor that should have had an affinity with the slaves. How do you control that class? You say to that class, these people are not only different, they're dangerous. If you're not careful, they'll rape your women, they will kill you, they will take what you've got. You have to help us to control them because you may be poor, but at least you're white.
Is it possible that having an Afro-American president has created more racism among whites because of resentment, or is that not a factor?
That's brought them out of the woodwork.
It's brought
Brought them out of the woodwork.
Out of the woods.
They were there. You know, the people who could not accept the idea of a successful black person, period, much less as president.
Can you imagine if Trump was a black male that was espousing some of these things about?
He'd be in jail.
He would be in jail. So no, Trump, we can't, it would be far too easy to say Trump is causing, no. Trump is removing the cover, and I mean, he's not being careful like you remove a bandage. He's just jerking the cover off, ripping it off.
50 years after the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act, which was supposed to eliminate all racial segregation in America, the wounds have reappeared, and the level of racism remains unsustainable. The level for black people in America is 24.1% compared to 9.1% for whites. The average earnings of the blacks is 65% lower than the average national salary. And the unemployment rate for young blacks is 21%, almost double the national average. These are the grim statistics, and they're no better than those from the judicial system, as former President Obama once remembered during the latest killing of a black unarmed youth by a white policeman.
African Americans are 30% more likely than whites to be pulled over. After being pulled over, African Americans and Hispanics are 3 times more likely to be searched. Last year, African Americans were shot by police at more than twice the rate of whites. African Americans are arrested at twice the rate of whites. African American defendants are 75% more likely to be charged with offenses carrying mandatory minimums. They receive sentences that are almost 10% longer than comparable whites arrested for the same crime. So that if you add it all up, the African American and Hispanic population, who make up only 30% of the general population, make up more than half of the incarcerated population.
At the headquarters of the Southern Poverty Law Center in Jackson, Mississippi, which handles hate crimes, racial discrimination, and poverty, these numbers are all too well known.
And unfortunately, in this country right now, we have a society where black men that look like me are viewed differently than white men. Black boys are suspended and expelled from school at higher percentages than their white counterparts. And when you make a society feel that these people are more dangerous or different, if you make a society feel like they don't have to understand and know these people, they can justify how they treat them differently. Once you dehuman someone or somebody, it's easy to treat them as inhuman. We see that all too often, and whether it's Baton Rouge or whether it's Florida, we see it throughout this country, that black folks are treated differently as it pertains to law enforcement.
Owens is referring to what happened in the summer of 2016 in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. Alton Sterling, a CD salesman, was murdered while on the ground, unarmed, by 2 white policemen. The next day, it was the turn of Philando Castile, another unarmed black shot by white police, this time in St. Anthony in Minnesota, with his girlfriend by his side and his 4-year-old daughter in the car. During my long voyage across the United States, I met many leaders of the Afro-American community, and each one of them told me their own story of racial discrimination. But I'll never forget the words of a woman who was strong and independent, a middle-class nurse in the town of Clarksdale, Mississippi. What struck me most was her answer when I asked her what the American dream meant for her.
I have a son. For me to be able to sleep at night without worrying about if he's going to be killed by the police. That's the American dream.